The alien girl was trained, not to interfere, but his struggle changed her, breaking the silent vigil. The observation deck hummed with barely perceptible energy as Zara pressed her palm against the viewing membrane, her silver-blue skin reflecting the harsh light of the distant star. 300 meters below, the human settlement of Faro Station clung to the asteroid's surface like a mechanical parasite, its domed structures connected by pressurized walkways that gleamed dully in the artificial atmosphere. She had been watching them for 217 standard cycles now, documenting their primitive but surprisingly resilient society for the Nixari Xenological Institute. The humans had arrived at this resource-rich asteroid 5 years ago, drawn by deposits of rare minerals that could power their crude fusion reactors. What they hadn't anticipated was how quickly their equipment would degrade under the constant bombardment of cosmic radiation this far from their home system. Zara's violet eyes tracked a familiar figure emerging from the central engineering complex. Marcus Delacroix moved with purpose despite the obvious exhaustion that lined his young face, his toolkit slung across his shoulder as he hurried toward the failing atmospheric processor on the station's eastern dome. At 22, he was younger than most of the colony's technical staff, but Zara had observed that the others deferred to his expertise with increasing frequency. Subject continues to display exceptional problem-solving capabilities, she murmured into her recording device, though her clinical tone couldn't quite mask the admiration that had been growing over the past several weeks. Despite inadequate resources and failing infrastructure, he maintains life support systems that should have failed months ago. The Nixari had developed faster-than-light travel when humans were still discovering fire. Their crystalline cities spanned dozens of star systems, their technology so advanced it seemed like magic to lesser species. The doctrine of non-interference was sacred among her people. They observed, they documented, but they never intervened. Primitive species had to earn their place in the galactic community through their own struggles, their own discoveries. But watching Marcus work, seeing him sacrifice sleep and food to jury-rig solutions that kept 300 colonists alive, Zara found herself questioning the wisdom of that ancient law. Her mentor, Elder Thorn, materialized behind her with the peculiar shimmer that accompanied Nexari teleportation. His presence carried the weight of centuries, his crystalline implants pulsing with a slow, measured rhythm that spoke of patient authority. Observer Zara, his mental voice resonated directly in her consciousness, as was proper for formal communication. Your reports have become increasingly detailed regarding the human engineer. Zara's bioluminescent freckles flickered nervously. He presents an interesting case study in adaptive problem-solving, Elder. His methods are crude but effective. Indeed. Thorn moved to stand beside her at the viewing membrane. The consortium is pleased with the quality of your observations. However, I sense something troubling in your psychic emanations. You must remember that these creatures, however ingenious, remain primitive. Their struggles are necessary for their development. Below them, Marcus had reached the atmospheric processor. Even from this distance, Zara could see the telltale shimmer of escaping gases around the main seal. The processor was failing, and without it, the eastern dome would lose breathable atmosphere within hours. 17 families lived in that section, including children too young to use the emergency breathing apparatus effectively. He knows it's failing, Zara whispered, watching Marcus run his scanner over the compromised seal. He's been monitoring the degradation for weeks, trying to find parts to repair it. And he will either succeed or fail based on his own capabilities, Thorn replied firmly. That is the natural order. Marcus knelt beside the processor, his movements careful and deliberate. Zara had observed him perform miracles of engineering with salvaged parts and sheer determination. But this time was different. The part he needed, a quantum flux regulator, was beyond the colony's ability to manufacture or repair. Shikyo had run the calculations herself. Without Nixari-level technology, the atmospheric processor would fail within 6 hours. Elder, she began carefully, what if the failure results in unnecessary deaths? Children, specifically. Thorn's mental emanation grew cold. Then their species will mourn and learn from the loss. That too is part of the natural development cycle. We do not interfere, observer Zara. We never interfere. Through the viewing membrane, she watched Marcus's shoulders sag as his scanner confirmed what she already knew. The regulator was beyond repair. He sat back on his heels for a moment, staring at the device that would soon kill 17 families if he couldn't find a solution that didn't exist. Then he stood, checked his chronometer, and began the long walk to the colony's communications center. He would send evacuation orders, cramming 17 families into spaces designed for half that number. Some would have to sleep in the corridors. The children would be frightened, displaced from their homes by equipment they couldn't understand, and Marcus would blame himself, as he always did when his engineering couldn't quite perform the impossible. "I request permission to return to the primary observation station," Thorne announced. "Continue your documentation, observer. The failure of this system will provide valuable data on human crisis response." The elder vanished in another shimmer of displaced space, leaving Zara alone with her conscience and her sworn oath of non-interference. For the next hour, she watched Marcus organize the evacuation with quiet efficiency. He helped families pack their essential belongings, reassured frightened children, and worked with the colony's leadership to redistribute resources. Not once did he display anger or despair, though Zara's empathic abilities detected both emotions roiling beneath his calm exterior. The quantum flux regulator sat in her observation deck's emergency supplies, a standard component that could solve Marcus's problem in seconds. The Nexari kept such items on hand for their own equipment maintenance, never considering that the same technology could save lives in the primitive settlement below. Zara's training warred with her conscience as she watched a young human child cry while her parents packed their belongings. The girl couldn't have been more than 6 years old, confused and frightened by the sudden upheaval of her small world. "We observe," Zara whispered to herself, repeating the first tenet of Nexari, Xenological doctrine. "We document, we do not interfere." But as Marcus finally allowed exhaustion to show in his posture, as families carried sleeping children through corridors that would soon flood with poison gas, Zara made a decision that would change everything. She reached for the quantum flux regulator with trembling fingers. The device was small, no larger than her palm, its crystalline matrix humming with contained energy. A simple piece of technology by Nexari standards, but it represented a line she had never crossed, a law her people considered sacred. Zara activated her personal cloaking field and stepped into the matter transporter. The journey to the colony's surface took only seconds, but it felt like crossing between different universes. The human settlement looked different from ground level, more fragile, more desperate, but also more real somehow. She materialized beside the failing atmospheric processor, just as Marcus returned for another futile attempt at repair. Her cloaking field kept her invisible, but as she knelt to install the regulator, her hand brushed against his toolkit. Marcus froze, his head turning toward the disturbance he couldn't quite perceive. For a terrifying moment, Zara thought he might have detected her presence, but after a few seconds, he shook his head and returned to his work. The quantum flux regulator integrated seamlessly with the human-built processor. Zara's fingers flew over the connections, making the delicate adjustments necessary to bridge the gap between Nexari and human technology. The work required only minutes, but each second felt like an eternity as she listened for approaching footsteps. Finally, the processor hummed back to life with a sound like crystal bells chiming in harmony. The gas leak sealed itself as the regulator took over the failing systems and fresh, clean air began flowing into the eastern dome once again. Marcus stared at his scanner in disbelief as the readings showed perfect atmospheric pressure and composition. He ran the diagnostic 3 times, unable to believe what his instruments were telling him. "That's impossible," he whispered, kneeling to examine the processor. His trained eye immediately spotted the new component, its alien design unmistakable among the familiar human technology. "What the hell?" Zara retreated to a safe distance, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. She had violated the most sacred law of her people, but as she watched Marcus's face transform from confusion to wonder, to cautious hope, she felt no regret. only the growing certainty that everything was about to change. Marcus called his engineering team and canceled the evacuation order. Families unpacked their belongings and settled their children back into their own beds. The Eastern Dome filled with laughter and relief as word spread that the atmospheric processor was not only functioning, but operating at peak efficiency. From her hidden vantage point, Zara watched the celebration and knew she had crossed a line from which there could be no return. Elder Thorne would discover her transgression soon enough, and the consequences would be severe. But as she saw the grateful tears in Marcus's eyes, as she heard the children's laughter echoing through the corridors that would have become their tomb, she realized that some choices were worth any price. The Watcher had become the Watched, and tomorrow, everything would change. The choice that changes everything. Marcus couldn't sleep. For 3 days he had stared at the quantum flux regulator that had mysteriously appeared in his atmospheric processor. Its alien design both beautiful and terrifying. The component was decades beyond human technology, its crystalline matrix pulsing with energy patterns that defied every principle of engineering he'd studied. Someone had been watching them. Someone with technology advanced enough to solve their problems with casual ease, yet choosing to remain hidden in the shadows. Tonight he would get answers. He slipped out of his quarters at 0300 hours, when the colony's skeleton night crew would be focused on the mining operations in the lower levels. The atmospheric processor hummed with perfect efficiency as he approached, its alien heart beating steadily in the mechanical chest of human engineering. "I know you're out there," he said quietly, his voice barely carrying in the thin air. "I know you've been watching us. Watching me." The silence stretched for long minutes. Marcus began to feel foolish, talking to empty space like a man losing his grip on sanity. Then the air shimmered, and reality folded in on itself. Zara materialized, 3 meters away, her cloaking field dissipating like morning mist. In the harsh industrial lighting of the processing station, her silver-blue skin seemed to glow with an inner radiance. Her violet eyes met his with a mixture of fear and determination that made his breath catch. "You knew I would come," she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed to resonate in harmonics his ears couldn't quite process. "The component," Marcus replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "It's not human technology. Someone had to install it, someone with access to materials we've never seen before." Zara nodded slowly. "My name is Zara. I am what you might call an observer. My people have been watching your colony." Watching. The word came out flat, edged with sudden anger. "For how long?" 217 days. She took a cautious step closer, her movements fluid and graceful in the low gravity. "We study developing civilizations, document their progress, their struggles. Study us." Marcus felt heat rising in his chest. "Like laboratory rats?" "No." The sharpness in her response surprised him. "Not like that. I have watched you specifically, Marcus Delacroix. Your dedication to your people, your willingness to sacrifice for others. You are not specimens." The way she said his name, with careful pronunciation that suggested she had practiced it many times, made something twist in his stomach. "How long have you been watching me specifically?" "Since the first atmospheric crisis 63 days ago. You worked for 18 straight hours to repair the oxygen recyclers, nearly killing yourself to save others." Her bioluminescent freckles flickered with what might have been embarrassment. "I found your determination fascinating." Marcus stared at her, processing the implications. Every moment of exhaustion, every private struggle with equipment that shouldn't work but somehow did because he willed it to. She had seen it all. The intimacy of that observation felt more invasive than any physical violation. "Your people," he said carefully. "They don't approve of you helping us." Zara's skin, patterns dimmed. The doctrine of non-interference is sacred among the Nexari. We observe, we document, but we never intervene. What I did, she gestured toward the processor. It violates everything my people believe about the natural development of species. And, yet you did it anyway. I watched 17 families preparing to abandon their homes. I saw children crying because they didn't understand why their world was falling apart. Her voice grew stronger, more certain. Some laws deserve to be broken. The sound of approaching footsteps made them both freeze. Commander Vale emerged. From the main corridor, her security detail flanking her with weapons drawn. The colony's leader was a hard woman, shaped by years of making impossible decisions in an impossible place. "Step away from our engineer," Vale commanded. Her plasma, rifle trained on Zara's center mass. "Commander, wait," Marcus said, moving between them. "She's not a threat. She saved the Eastern Dome." "She's an alien spy who's been watching us for months," Vale replied grimly. "That makes her a threat by definition." Zara raised her hands in a gesture of surrender, though her posture remained graceful rather than defeated. "I understand your concern, Commander Vale. My presence here violates your sovereignty and your privacy." "Damn right it does." Vale's finger hovered over the trigger. "The question is whether you're advance reconnaissance for an invasion force." "The Nexari have no interest in conquest," Zara replied calmly. "Your technology, your resources, they are primitive by our standards. We seek knowledge, not territory." "Then why help us?" Marcus asked. "If we're so primitive, why risk violating your laws?" Zara's violet eyes found his, and for a moment the armed guards and the tension in the air seemed to fade away. "Because watching you struggle, watching you sacrifice everything for others while believing yourself unworthy of the same consideration, it changed something in me." The Nexari pride themselves on logical detachment, but logic cannot explain why your pain became mine. The admission hung in the air like a confession, raw and vulnerable. Marcus felt his anger dissolving, replaced by something more complex and dangerous. Commander Vale's communicator crackled to life. "Commander, we've got multiple contacts on long-range sensors. Unknown configuration heading straight for us." "How many?" Vale demanded, her weapon never wavering from Zara. "3 ships, Commander, moving faster than anything in our databases." Zara's skin patterns flared bright with alarm. "Elderthorn," she whispered. "He's found me." "Your people?" Marcus asked. "An enforcement squad. They've come to arrest me and ensure the colony forgets this contact ever occurred." Her bioluminescent freckles pulsed rapidly with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as fear. "Commander Vale, you need to evacuate your people immediately." "We're not running from anyone," Vale declared. But Marcus could hear the uncertainty beneath her bravado. "You don't understand," Zara said urgently. "The Nexari consider interference with primitive species a contamination event. Standard protocol is to sterilize the contamination." The blood drained from Vale's face. "They'll destroy the colony. They will remove all evidence of contact, yes? Your people will be relocated to a planet more suitable for your development level, with no memory of this encounter or of me." "Memory wipe," Marcus breathed. "You can do that?" "The Nexari can do many things your science would consider impossible." Zara's voice grew heavy with regret. "I'm sorry, Marcus, I wanted to save you, but I may have doomed you instead." The colony's emergency klaxons began wailing as the 3 alien ships entered visual range. Through the dome's transparent aluminum, Marcus could see them descending, sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls, their very presence making his eyes water. "There has to be another way," he said desperately. "Some way to prove that contact can be beneficial." "The Nexari don't negotiate with primitives," Zara replied, her skin now pulsing with rapid, anxious patterns. "To them, you are children playing with dangerous toys." Then we changed their minds. Marcus turned to Commander Vale. "Give me access to the colony's main reactor." "What are you planning?" Vale demanded. "A demonstration." Marcus's mind raced as he calculated power requirements and energy distribution patterns. "Zara, that regulator you installed, it's not just keeping our atmosphere stable, is it? It's actually improving our entire life support efficiency." "Yes," she confirmed, confusion coloring her voice. The quantum matrix optimizes energy, flow across connected systems. Then help me show your people what humans can do when we're given the tools to succeed. He grasped her shoulder, feeling the warmth of her alien skin through her biosuit. Help me prove that cooperation is possible. The lead Nexari ship settled onto the colony's landing pad with impossible grace. Through the viewing ports, Marcus could see tall figures disembarking, beings like Zara but somehow colder, their movements precise and emotionless. Elder Thorn approaches, Zara whispered, her entire body trembling. If he finds the regulator integrated with your systems, then we give him something else to think about, Marcus replied, his fingers flying over the reactor control interface. Commander, I need full power authorization. Vale hesitated for only a moment before entering her command codes. What are you doing? Something impossible, Marcus said, watching as energy readings spiked across every system in the colony. Zara, I need you to help me recalibrate the quantum matrix. If we can network all our life support systems through your technology. Understanding dawned in her violet eyes. You want to demonstrate adaptive integration. Show them that human engineering can incorporate Nexari technology rather than simply depending on it. Exactly. Your people think we're primitive, but they're wrong. We're innovative. We adapt. We make impossible things work through sheer determination and creative thinking. Working together, their hands moving in synchronized precision over both human and alien interfaces, they began weaving Zara's quantum regulator into every major system in the colony. Life support, power distribution, mining operations, communications. Everything became connected through a hybrid network that was both more and less than the sum of its parts. The colony transformed around them. Lights burned brighter and steadier. The air itself seemed cleaner, more vibrant. Equipment that had struggled for months suddenly hummed with perfect efficiency. Elder Thorn's mental voice cut through the colony's communication system like a crystalline blade. Observer Zara, you will present yourself for judgment immediately. Instead of responding directly, Zara opened a communication channel to the Nexari ships. Elder Thorn, I request that you examine the integration matrix we have created here. You have contaminated these primitives with our technology, came the cold reply. The contamination will be cleansed. The contamination has become synthesis, Marcus interjected, his voice carrying across the alien communication network through Zara's neural link. Your technology didn't replace ours, it enhanced it. We made it better. The silence that followed stretched for long, tense minutes. Then Elder Thorn materialized in the reactor chamber, his crystalline implants pulsing with slow, measured rhythms. Behind him came two other Nexari, their faces emotionless masks of authority. Impossible, Thorn said, studying the readouts on both human and Nexari displays. Primitive technology cannot interface with quantum matrices without catastrophic resonance failure. Human technology can, Marcus replied steadily. Because we don't just use tools. We understand them, adapt them, make them part of something larger than their original design. Elder Thorn examined the hybrid systems with growing amazement. The quantum regulator hadn't simply been installed in human equipment. It had been integrated so thoroughly that separating the technologies would destroy both. More importantly, the human modifications had actually improved the regulator's efficiency beyond Nexari baseline specifications. This should not be possible, Thorn murmured, his mental emanations betraying wonder despite his attempts at cold authority. Many things are possible when different perspectives work together, Zara said quietly. I learned this by watching Marcus and his people. They don't see obstacles. They see puzzles to be solved. Elder Thorn straightened, his ancient eyes moving between the impossible readings and the two beings who had somehow made the impossible real. Observer Zara, you have violated the most sacred law of our people. Yes, she replied without hesitation. And yet, he gestured at the seamlessly integrated system surrounding them. This synthesis suggests that the doctrine of non-interference may be incomplete. Commander Vale stepped forward, her weapon lowered but ready. Elder Thorn, I speak for the human colony of Pharaoh Station. We request formal diplomatic contact with the Nexari Consortium. The ancient aliens' crystalline implants flared with surprise. You ask for recognition as equals? We ask for recognition as partners, Marcus corrected. We may be younger than your people, but we bring our own strengths to any collaboration. Elder Thorn was quiet for a long moment, his mental emanations cycling through centuries of doctrine and precedent. Finally, he spoke. The consortium will need to debate this precedent. Until a decision is reached, this colony will remain under Nexari protection. And Zara? Marcus asked. The elder's gaze moved to his former student, whose bioluminescent patterns now pulsed in perfect synchronization with the hybrid system she had helped create. Observer Zara will remain here as our first diplomatic attaché. As the Nexari, enforcement ships departed, leaving behind a future none of them had imagined possible. Marcus and Zara stood together watching the stars. The quantum regulator hummed between them, a bridge built from broken laws and impossible dreams. What happens now? Marcus asked. Zara's skin glowed softly in the artificial twilight. Now we discover what's possible when watching becomes caring, and caring becomes action. In the distance, human and Nexari technologies work together in perfect harmony, powered by the radical idea that different didn't mean lesser, just different. And sometimes, different was exactly what the universe needed.